So did you delete your main camera? Yeah. Now click on that and go to where it says untagged, go to main camera.
Maybe I have that already.
I don't know how it works with Vuforia.
You didn't need to do any of this.
Yeah, no, but they're gonna do it in
Right, yeah.
here.
Okay, so once you've done that, let's see, what else do we need to do?
Why do you have
Player settings. There's a bunch of stuff I haven't had you add yet. We'll go over that in just a minute. Let's set up the player settings. So go to build settings and then click on the platform that you are planning to use, iOS or Android, and go to player settings. And then in player settings, make sure you click on either this guy here for iOS or this guy here for Android. And in your iOS settings, come up with a company name for yourself. Don't use mine, although it probably doesn't matter. I find it's best to just use the same one that you've been using for all of your other objects or applications. And then give the product name a new name that you haven't used on a different application already. Version, just make sure there's something in there. It doesn't really matter what it is. I did find out, I tried to change this to 0.1 without a 0, and it got mad at me. You have to have a number as the first digit. You can't have it just be 0.1. It has to be 0.1. Stupid. All right, and then for iOS, then that'll fill in your bundle identifier as com dot your company name dot your product description. That's fine. You don't need to change that. What you will want to change if you're doing iOS is click on ARKit support. When you do that, it'll pop up a warning saying that you need to set your minimum iOS version to 11. So do that. So target minimum iOS version as 11. And then architecture, you'll need to set that as ARM64. Okay. I think that's all you need for iOS. For Android, are you doing Android or iOS? Okay, for Android, you want to get rid of, under graphics APIs, get rid of Vulkan because it doesn't like the Vulkans. Yeah. And I was trying to come up with a Star Trek joke and I just couldn't. Turn off multi-threaded rendering. It doesn't like that either. And change the minimum target API to 7. Because otherwise it won't work. Doesn't really matter, I don't think, as long as your phone has something bigger than 7 on it. Yeah, but I can't remember what.
I couldn't build for that.
Okay.
Don't let me say that I didn't hide it, have the IP level.
I see, yeah. So yeah, make sure you have it as 7 Nougat. And then what? In minimum API under identification, minimum API level.
API?
Yeah.
I have it.
So change that to 7.
So yeah.
Okay. Then I think ARM v7 is fine. I don't think you need to change that. Let me see. Was there anything else? I think that's it.
I have another one who's in problem. What is graphic jobs experimental?
Graphic what?
Jobs experimental. Before.
Show me.
Here. I haven't unactivated it here. This one.
Oh, graphic jobs. Just leave that unchecked.
Unchecked?
Yeah, I don't have that on mine, right? Graphic jobs. I don't even see that. Oh, graphic skinning, graphic jobs. Yeah, no, leave that off. Okay. Cool. So that should be all you need for that. Maybe that was because you didn't take off Vulkan graphics. That would be the only thing I could think of that might make that happen. Okay. Cool. So now we need to add a canvas, I believe. So you guys have AR session origin, the AR camera, and you don't have any of these three things at the bottom, right? So go to UI and canvas to add a canvas. And that should give you a canvas and an event system, right? Okay. Then in the canvas, you need to, so click on canvas and right click and say add a UI panel. And that should give you a panel here called, it won't say options panel, it'll just say panel. Go ahead and change its name to options panel. Okay. And let's see. In this, we want to add some text. So what did I do on this? I think this was another. Did any text? Did a text? Is there a child object to that called text? I can't remember.
No, it's just.
Let me add another panel. I'll find out what I do. Hold on. UI panel. Okay, so in here we want to add UI text. Let me get rid of this. So add UI text and then call that options text. And close this. Go down to the text field and put in options : What do you want to see? What do you want to see?
So we put canvas.
Canvas, and then add a panel.
And a panel.
So you right click on canvas and say add UI panel. UI panel.
And then text over panel.
And then inside of panel, add text. And we're using this all for the word options, so I named it options panel and options text.
You need it.
Yeah. By default, it'll just say panel and text. Okay? And then in the text, make sure, go ahead and put the word options : and you can change the font size to 45. I found was a good size, or you can make it bigger if you want. You can change the color. I don't know what it is by default. Is it gray? Is black? Then change it to white. On the panels, is that something we needed to adjust? The color? Let me see. Make a new panel.
The color of the panel is default white. So probably.
Okay, yeah. So yes. Okay, so in your panel, go to color and set it to like a dark gray. And you can play with the alpha and kind of create one that's as transparent as you want. I would probably have some transparency so that you can see behind it, because it's not going to go away. It's going to be glued to the bottom of your screen. All right. So now let's size this panel. So, oh wait, jeez. If you click on the panel and you hit F, that'll frame select it, and then you can use your option drag to kind of zoom in on it. And then you can use your tools up here to scale and move this thing around. So you can just use this one here, I find, the rect tool, and drag it down so that it's kind of a box. Like that, right? And you have your text inside of it, right? Here, let me get, this is the extra one I was working on. Let me go back to the original one. So here's my panel. I guess not the, where am I getting this? What is that? Options panel. Okay, never mind. Is this below the ground? It is. What? Yeah. So that's what we were doing right now was resizing. So maybe I need to change the canvas size. Can't remember what I did here. All right.
Like the text,
What?
like the text, could you like make the?
Let me see what you guys got so I can see where we're kind of at. Oh, okay.
Here, so I'm thinking maybe you just have the text box. And
Yeah, so try to change your panel size to be smaller. So you can use the rect tool and drag it down from the middle instead of changing its undo, and grab it from the middle of the top of the thing, yeah, like that. Now drag the text to, yeah, rect transform. So my options panel is set to centered here. I have a position Y of negative 426. I don't know if that'll help or not.
Use the box, right?
Yeah. What is this now? This is, yeah, no, this is part of it. It's just off the canvas. What's wrong with yours, Shar?
Oh no, whenever I'm trying to make it says top, not line. So whenever I'm trying to make this one, you want it to be like that. You want it to look like the option.
Yeah, I want it to be kind of this size, and we're gonna put some buttons inside of it. What's your width set to? Change your width to 800 on your options panel. Change your width to like 800, and you can set the height to like 185. Yeah. Okay. I don't think so. It's an AR camera. Make sure you've deleted your main camera and that you only have an AR camera and you have that tagged as main camera. Width 800, height 185. Let me take a look. What? Where's your click on your canvas? Oh, I see. So your canvas is a different size from mine. Does that have a size canvas screen space overlay? Should screen space be camera? I think so. Let me see. Ow. So my canvas just says screen space overlay. Target display 1, additional shader channels nothing. Blocking mask everything. Yeah, I think this is all default stuff. Let's see. There's something over here I remember looking at. Am I still zoomed in? Free aspect. Do you have free aspect in your game view? Checked? Yeah, okay. What is going on? What is this? This is canvas. So I did change the size of my canvas, I guess. My canvas is 728 by 497. So yours is obviously different than mine. Now, where did I change that? Yeah, I didn't look into how this worked out. I'm sorry. So let me see if I can't figure this out. So we have a panel. You have your panel size set to 800 by 185. Okay. and you have options text. But I guess we're still working on this canvas. All right, so canvas layer UI. This, no, you can't change any of this. What's that? Blueprint mode. No, that's not it.
What is the size? Does it matter?
I don't know. I don't think so. Do you have canvas scalar script, constant pixel size? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, reference pixel per unit 100. Okay. Do you have, what do you have on your, let's see. Does that change anything? No, not really. Let me make a new canvas and see what happens. Just a second. Just make new UI canvas. See, mine just comes out that size. Let's just say it doesn't matter for now, and let's wait. Just try to build it as best you can, and then we'll adjust the placement of things once we get everything in there. This wasn't something I really thought about, so I don't have the answer for you right offhand. I'm guessing it has to do with the size of, I mean, does it change when I zoom in? No. Does it change when I zoom out? No. Is it this 2D, 3D thing? No. I'm guessing it has to do with the size of the phone screen that you normally attach to it. I'm wondering. I don't know. I can't tell you, I guess. All right, so make inside your canvas, you have this options panel and an options text. And the options text has its size. You can make that text box smaller. So this options text is a size of like 220 by 54 on mine. And then I've moved it in this panel at a specific place. So this is my panel, 185. This is the panel, and I have it moved down to the bottom of this.
So put the panel below the canvas.
For now, I guess that's where I have mine. Where did I have it? I had mine at like negative 350. And still, mine's not low enough on my phone. It's kind of hovering in the middle. It was like, I was like, I'll get to that when I get the thing working, and then I never did get it working fully. Okay, so yeah, create a little panel. This panel inside your text, make it this kind of shape, where it's about the width of this canvas, maybe a little bit less, and narrow. And then inside of that, we want to add some buttons. So you can, inside the panel, right-click UI. Isn't there a button? Button. Okay? And then you have a button, and you can name this Toggle Shadows button. Here, I'll make a new one. So I'm going to call this Toggle Shadows button. Okay, and now let me turn these off for a minute. So this is kind of what you guys have so far, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So on this now you have this button that you've named Toggle Shadows button. You can, if you open up that, it comes with a child object called text. And you can click on that and change the name. And so call this Toggle Shadows. it's the child object inside of the button called text. Okay, and then we want to make this bigger. So click on, what did I do for the text size? I think I did, go ahead and make the font size for this something like 30 instead of 14, which will make it disappear because the button's not big enough to hold something that big. And so then we want to rescale this, and we can use our handy dandy rect tool to do that. So make the font size 30 and then adjust the size of the button so that it fits that text in it. And then you can use your move tool to move this over and put it underneath the word options. Okay, how you guys doing? Does anybody need more time?
Sorry, can you move in just a little bit on the default toggles? It's okay.
What do you want to see?
Yeah, sorry.
So toggle, create a button called toggle shadows button. And then inside of that, there's a child object called text. And that's where you can put text in the script. And then set the font size to 30. Okay? And then adjust, when you set the font size to 30, if you still have a small button, it'll disappear. And then you'll need to resize your button to make it bigger until the text comes back. And then once you have that done, then go ahead and push it over to the side. Okay? Then once you do that, let me just do this. Let me turn this one back on. So now we have this one here. Go ahead, once you got one that looks good the way you like it, just duplicate it. Right click on the object, the button object, and duplicate it. And then drag what you've just duplicated over and put it in the middle. Okay? And then you can rename it to toggle lighting. So where it says toggle shadows button, change that to toggle lighting button. And then make sure you go into the text and click on toggle, or change it from toggle shadows to toggle lighting. Okay? Now duplicate that. Rename it to toggle plain. Toggle plain button. And change the text to toggle plain or toggle planes. And then drag over. What? So inside your buttons, what you chose a button called toggle button? No, you choose button. UI button. Yeah. Now, I guess you got me confused because I had the words toggle in it, but it's not a toggle. What? Never go to the bathroom. All right. So now you should have 3 planes. One says toggle shadow. You should have 3 buttons. One says toggle shadows. One says toggle lighting. One says toggle planes. Yeah? What time is it? 3:02. Okay, we're doing all right. All right. I'm going to get rid of these. You don't have to get rid of things. I made extra copies. And let me turn these back on. Okay. So I believe that's all we need in here.
One question.
Yeah.
Inside the text, we have to put the number of the
Inside of text, you put the actual text, and you put the font size as 30. Yeah, so change the font size to 30.
No, I mean, I changed it to 30 last time. But for some reason 14 was bigger.
That doesn't make sense.
I know.
You must have accidentally done 3.0 or something. I don't know.
I was gonna make it 14.
Okay. Cool. So that's it on the canvas for now. Do you have... All right, so let's go ahead and import our scripts. So download all of those scripts from the website. It's under week 5. So download, make sure you download materials, prefabs, and scripts. Okay? And once you've done that, then you can go into, let's make some directories in your assets folder. Make a directory called materials. Make a directory called prefabs. A directory called scenes. And a directory called scripts. You might be able to just drag them in there. Yeah, let's do that actually. That's way easier. So where you downloaded them, just drag them into your assets folder right on Unity. So you can have Unity open right here and you just have your assets, and then you have Finder open. Whoops, if you don't have it on full screen. Where'd my Unity go? Unity. So if I take Unity off of full screen and then I open Finder next to it and I go to downloads and then I find those directories that I had and you just drag it in here, right? And so then you should have materials, prefab, scenes, and scripts. Okay. Are you guys all with me? All right. So then let's see. What do we have to do? We have to add the, let's see. So you should have in your prefabs, do you have a placed dragon and an AR plane visualizer?
You're saying is there a prefab called that there?
Yeah, do you have these in your prefabs?
Yes.
Or do they have any errors on them?
No.
Do you have a picture of a dragon next to it?
Yeah.
Okay, great, good. That was something that didn't work the first time I did it on mine. All right, cool. That means if you import the dragon first before you try to pull in your prefab that uses the dragon, then it'll work. If you try to pull in the prefab first, then it freaks out saying, I don't have this. Okay? So, and in your prefabs, I believe in this place dragon, let's double click on this to open up. So here's the dragon statue. Is that working for everybody? You can hit F to frame select it to put it in the middle of the viewer.
Mine appears to be a stick.
Yours appears to be a stick. All right, let's take a look. What do you got? That's your dragon? No, you're on plane visualizer.
Oh.
Double click dragon. There you
Oh.
go. Now hit F.
You don't have no dragon.
You gotta import your dragon.
You gotta import the dragon. Find your bucket.
And the scripting's gonna like yell at you because it doesn't have this stuff.
Okay, I'll
that-
just import it again.
Did you import it from? Where did you import it from?
From the Google Drive that you sent us.
Oh, okay.
You put it in your bucket.
Did you put it in the in a directory
What do you
called
mean by put it
Dragon?
in my project? It's right here in my project.
All right, yeah, but there's another thing called Dragon in the
Okay.
Dragon statue. That entire directory.
When I download
Drag that
I
directory into your project. into
did,
your
but
assets
But I'll
folder.
do it again.
That's not there. So that here needs to go into your project. That's
This Dragon Statue has its own utility, as you can see.
So drag it into assets.
It's not
Looks like you
I'll
missed.
just keep this.
Hmm?
Is that
what is
prefab
that?
is like the container. It doesn't actually have anything. It
Oh,
points to another object.
I have to, the last time I have to download from just one file and not whole folder. So if
Yeah, I don't know why
download-
yours is zipping a file. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Oh, when it has multiple files, it's a
Oh.
But since it's very slow, I mean,
Yeah, the zipping takes
no, like I don't see nothing.
It doesn't even have that much. The script still doesn't have that much stuff in it.
Yeah, so I think I don't know. And the last one is the
So you could create your directory called scripts, and then you could go inside of that folder and put them in one at a time.
You've already had the Dragon thing downloaded, right?
What?
You already have the Dragon thing downloaded, right? From the asset store?
yeah, I just
So
have
just
to-
download, zip everything else, and all of that is really tiny. What's
Yeah,
probably
I got.
taking so
This
long-
one is a script.
It's just the script. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
So
Just the single file,
the whole file.
Cancel download.
the whole folder, right?
Yeah, whole folder, but
If you want to just do them individual files, just do the individual
Yeah.
files.
So make a folder in your assets folder called scripts.
Don't worry about the meta files. Just do this, the CS files.
Yeah. Yeah, you dragged it into the wrong place and then it freaked out. Because you have to drag it in your assets folder. Okay. So in your dragon statue, in your dragon prefab, if you click on this prefab called Placed Dragon, which was in the prefabs folder that you downloaded, in there is dragon statue, and in that should be a placement object script. Is that correct? You guys all have that? Maybe not.
Dragon statue placement object.
Placement object script. Okay, great. Cool. Okay, so then, and you have materials in there too, right? Yeah, great. So then we need to go into scripts, and there's a script called Effects Manager. And if you want to get back to your scene, if you're still in the prefab view with the blue background, you can click on Scenes over here, and it'll go back to your main scene. And then in your scripts is something called Effects Manager. Make a new object over in your hierarchy, an empty game object, and label it Effects Manager. Not all caps like I just did. Make it like this one here. Okay? And then when you have that empty game object, then drag that Effects Manager script into it. Okay? Now I have two. Let me get rid of this. Okay. And we should be able to populate all of these. So then you'll have multiple fields on this script, and I'll go over those in a minute if we have time, and how they work. But for now, let's go ahead and start populating this stuff. So your directional, where it says default light, you want to drag your directional light into that field. Where it says toggle light button, go into your canvas. You can also click on the circle and click on toggle lighting button. Thank you. So the default light, I'm going to click on toggle lighting button. The default shadows button, I'm going to click on toggle shadows button. the default plane detection button, I'm going to click on toggle plane button. You created a new empty game object, create empty, and then drag the effects manager script from your scripts folder into that empty game object. And then you go ahead and add these to it. Is light? Yeah, oh, directional light. All you have to do is hit the circle and pick the appropriate thing from the list.
How about
Oh, AR plane manager. Can I hit the circle there? Yes. AR session origin. Click on that. If it doesn't work, then drag it in from AR session origin.
it's not letting me do that.
Because you don't have an AR plane manager. Okay, let's do this then. Let's grab the place, drag, drop script and drag that into your AR session origin. Yes, AR session origin object. That should create a AR plane manager because I had it as a required component. So when you have that, now you should have this AR raycast manager, AR plane manager, and then your AR drag drop script. So then on your placed prefab, put the placed dragon prefab in there. In your placed drag drop script in your AR session origin. Go ahead and drag in your placed dragon prefab. And then your AR camera, you can probably just click that out of the list and click AR camera, or you can drag the AR camera child object into there. Okay? And now you should be able to go back to your effects manager now, and under AR plane manager, if you click the circle, it should be there under AR session origin. Yeah? If not, just drag the AR session origin into that field. Is that working for you?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, so this is the effects manager script that we're on now.
Yep, that's there.
Okay, you got it. So you now have all of your fields populated in effects manager, and under AR session origin, you have all of your fields populated under place prefab and AR camera.
Yes, and for plane prefab, do we put AR plane visualizer?
Okay, so then yes, under plane prefab on plane visualizer, put your AR plane visualizer prefab in there, which you can maybe also do through the circle. Yeah, it's just make sure you choose AR plane visualizer and not a dragon. That would be unfortunate. Okay, how are we doing? One other thing now. We need to add the scripts. We need to add the light estimation script to your directional light. So drag that onto your directional light, and then light estimation script. Drag that onto your directional light, and then drag your camera into the AR camera manager. So I can drag my camera into my AR camera manager like that. I have two of them right here because I did it again, but I only need one. Okay, so then you should have that populated. Yeah? How are you doing, Camilla? You don't know? It's fine. We're not going to do much with this today, so let's take the extra time we need to get it right. So how are you doing?
Oh, I have to open. Don't worry.
You got buttons.
Yeah, I
Oh, you got buttons. Okay.
I'm here.
Okay.
You said AR session origin.
Yes.
Manager.
The AR plane manager, if you're in your AR session origin, if you've placed your place drag drop script into that, it should add an AR plane manager component.
Yeah. Did you say put the plane visualizer?
Put plane visualizer and plane prefab in that plane manager component. Shar, did you get the dragon yet?
Yes, I'm all good.
Oh, great. Okay. Oh, good call. Thank you. So I like to, let's start with just horizontal. And so to get it to be just horizontal, uncheck by clicking on vertical, and then it should leave just horizontal. Okay? All right, so now before we build this, which we're probably just gonna save for next week, let's take a look at the actual scripts and try to understand what's going on.
What's it supposed to do?
So I can show you what it's supposed to do on my iPad, which kind of works, but has some bugs that I still haven't ironed out. Let me see if I can. Create my own network. And connect to my own network. Because it doesn't let me screen share over the CalArts network. It's really annoying. Works perfectly at my house. I should just set up my own Wi-Fi hub in here. Okay. And now I can run 5K player. Oh, caps lock. Where the heck is it? 5K player. Applications. 5K player. And now if I go to AirPlay, and I go to AirPlay, and I'm so pissed that they took off the ability for me just to screen with movie recorder, because that was working perfectly, and then I updated and now it doesn't. And I go to this, and then I scroll down and I go to screen mirroring and I click on my MacBook Pro, and here we are. And I click on my light estimation app that I've built. And so there's our little UI that we've just built, right? And if I move in and out, then I can get a plane detection. And if I tap on the plane, what the heck? If I tap on the plane, come on, this was working a minute ago and I didn't even change it.
Maybe it's because of all the computers.
I think so. Is it up in the air?
Like the cords and stuff. Oh, wait, that changed something.
Well, that's changing the lighting. The lighting is kind of working, but why can't I put,
That's so cool.
why can't I actually instantiate my dragon? This makes no sense to us. There. Okay, I got a dragon. Whatever. All right, so there's the dragon. And there's another bug in this where it renames the buttons, and I didn't get a chance to update that, so they're going to look a little weird. And it says toggle shadows twice for some reason. No, it doesn't. But there, you can see if I click on lighting, you can see how it adjusts the lighting based on the lighting conditions, right?
The lighting in the room.
It's supposed to. I don't think it's working 100%.
Okay.
Because when I turn the light off, it should get, this model should get really dark, and it's not. So something's going on there that I want to fix. The plane detection will be able to turn off this plane detection. And you can still, even after you've turned off the plane detection, you can still drag this thing around on the plane that you've detected. So that's really handy, right? And then it's a little hard to look to see, but if you see, whoops, toggle shadows, if you look in just the right place, you can see there. So see how when I turn enable shadows underneath his horn here, you have a shadow. When I turn it off, it goes away, right? So it's always just kind of a little thing, but when you're able to match the lighting intensity in the room, and essentially you're supposed to be able to match the color temperature of the room as well, it really places that it places the object better in the room.
So is it doing that by adjusting the values of the light source?
Yes, so that script that we put onto the directional light is supposed to do light estimation and then update its intensity and based on that. Okay, so yeah, that's basically what's going on here.
Which one? The disable detection?
So see that the prefab that we had for plane detection, that thing that's building on the screen right now. I click that, it goes away. The plane's still there though, and I can still move the thing around on the invisible plane, which is good because we don't want this here the whole time, right? It kind of detracts from the AR experience, but when you're placing something, you want to see where that plane is. Okay. So let's take a look at, in the 30 minutes that we have left, let's take a look at these scripts and see what's going on. I guess we'll start with let's start with the plane with the lighting estimation script. So in your directional light, we put this light estimation script. Go ahead and double click on the script to load it in, what's it called? In Visual Studio. And here I'll zoom in. View. Zoom in. All right. So there's some extra functions in here that I was going to do, but I ran out of time, and so I just disabled them. I was going to actually have it take a value and print the value on the screen, and I'll probably do that for next week. So not only should it color the lighting and change the intensity of the lighting, but it'll also have like viewed on the screen what the current value is for the lighting so that you can see as I lower the lights in the room that value dropping, right? So you have this is just the class, it's called light estimation. Then we have private AR camera manager that's calling the AR camera manager, which is in here, right? AR camera manager. In this AR camera manager, you would want to change your lighting estimation mode from disabled to ambient intensity. Doesn't matter because I don't think we'll build today, but you would want to make sure that that was set to ambient intensity so that it actually does something. Otherwise, it won't do anything. So that's what that is calling on. It's loading that into your script, that method into your script. And we give it an instance name of AR Camera Manager. And then we define a light called current light. And then we actually have to populate the current light with the light component. And because this script is sitting on the actual light object, all we have to do is say get component light. And that will pull the light component from our game object and populate this variable current light with that component. Then we can access that and change its intensity and so forth, right? So then we have some voids here. We have on enable, meaning when the camera is enabled, AR camera manager dot frame received add to the updated frame. So plus equals means take the previous value and add anything new to it. So every time there's a new camera frame that comes in, it'll add to camera manager frame updated. And every time it's disabled, it'll subtract from that. And I'll get you a better description of this later. But basically, that you're pulling from the frames as they're coming in and doing an estimation on those frames, and this sets up that ability, right? So then we call this frame updated. When the frame updated comes in, we pass that through camera. We use camera frame event arguments, and we're naming that instance args. I could name this anything I wanted. I could call it camera args or something like that if I wanted to. And basically that will, so every time there is a frame received, that gets added to this frame updated variable. Then we are calling that frame updated. I guess this is a method actually. This is a method called frame updated. Here's where we define that method here, frame updated, and these are the values used by that method, and the values used by that method are the frame event arguments that we've named args. And what are frame event arguments? Well, this is where we get access to our light estimation algorithms and stuff. So current light, which we defined up here, right? Current light.
Directional light.
Directional light, exactly. Dot intensity, so we're setting the intensity of the current light based on the camera, the current frame coming in from the camera, which is defined by this method called AR camera frame event arguments, which we gave a shortcut name of args, right? So args dot light estimation dot average brightness, and then the value of that average brightness. So the value of the average brightness is getting set, the current light's intensity is getting set to the value of the average brightness.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. The color temperature of the current light is set to the light estimation average color value.
And these are just all values it's getting from our phone.
It's getting, yeah, and those values are defined under sub-methods that are defined in this AR camera frame event class.
Okay.
Okay? Then we do some if statements. This is where I was going to have the brightness printed on the screen, and I just didn't get to it all the way. But basically, if there's a value, then we'll set that brightness to some text that will display on the screen. But I have that commented out right now. And we set the current light intensity to that same value. So I think these might be doing the same thing. And originally the example code I had didn't have these two things. It just had these if statements.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't seem to be working for me. So then I looked up another example, and they didn't have these if statements. They had these. And so I put them both in to see if that would work. But needless to say, I'm sure this will be updated next week when I have it all working.
Does it tell like the direction that the light is coming from?
No. I thought that it did,
Mm-hmm.
and I looked in the paperwork. I mean in the manual, and it only does
Just the average of like
the intensity and color.
Okay.
That's all it does. Then you can also turn on and off shadows that are created by that virtual light, but it doesn't do light position and light direction. You just kind of you're just gonna kind of have to try to control the way your app is used. If you're using your app indoors, it's not that much of a problem because most of the light comes from overhead, and most of the light, because we have walls around us that are bouncing light all over the place, you don't get heavy shadows that imply a directionality indoors. If I was in a theater setting and I had like a spotlight on it and it's pushing the shadow over here, but my virtual directional light's over here going the other way and its shadows are this way, it's going to break the illusion. There's not currently the technology to account for that. Also, outdoors sunlight shadows are going to either be correct or be incorrect, depending on the way the person is facing, right? So one way you can try to account for that or make it not as obvious that it doesn't have that ability is to try to avoid heavy shadows and to make your shadows kind of blobby and kind of just set the directional light kind of up above it so that it casts a shadow kind of downward. That way the shadow is just kind of around the object instead of being an obvious to the left or to the right, because that's where it's really going to break the illusion if it doesn't match reality. And like I said, there isn't currently a way to do that. If you could devise a way, I'd give you a high pass. I mean, it should be possible if you did some. The problem is you'd have to recognize what a shadow was and look at things that are cast in the real world that are casting shadows, determine the direction of that shadow, and then use that to infer the lighting position and direction. It would be a very big challenge that I think is way beyond my abilities. So yeah, if you were to figure out that, I think not only would you get an A in this class, you probably could make some money off of that. So, okay, so then this is doing the same thing as what I did above. It's just setting the color, temperature, and the intensity. Oh, there is one other thing called color correction, which has to do with the color that's detected of the light. And you can set the light color to that. I haven't seen that working in anybody's examples at this point, so I'm not sure whether it's not actually working in the current version of AR Core or AR Foundation. But so far, everybody who has examples online, they're just doing brightness and color temperature. They're not doing the actual color of the light. So that's the light estimation. So what that is doing, again, is just setting this directional light's color and intensity, right? And so you could put soft shadows are on by default. You could put hard shadows, but then it would make differences between real world and virtual world more obvious. Okay. And then this light currently is in the center at 0, 0, at 0x and 0z, so sitting right at the origin, and then 3 meters up. So basically overhead light, right? If you knew you were going to do your AR experience with people at 5:45 or at 6:30 p.m. at sunset, and you had them in a particular place looking a particular direction,
Like a spiked area.
in a spiked area, or you say meet at the steps and meet at the CalArts steps and look at the blue wall. You know which way they'll be facing, and because of the time of the day, you know where the sun will be, and you can set your light to match that. Does that make sense? If they turn around, it'll break the illusion, but you could place your AR stuff based on that wall here, and if they turn around, there's nothing for them to look at, so there's nothing that's going to have the incorrect lighting. So that would be the best way to like completely sell it, is to maintain control over the where people are standing and so forth. Okay, so then let's take a look at place, drag, drop. This is actually similar to what we've already used. We have our place prefab. That's just going to be what you're actually placing when you have a plane hit, right? We have our AR camera. We have a placed object. So that's when it's actually placed. Then it gets referenced as this placed object. You have a touch position that's currently set to nothing. The default, I think, is 0, 0. And then you have your AR Raycast Manager, which you use for detecting trackables, meaning horizontal or vertical surfaces. And then you're also going to use physics raycasting to see if you've actually touched an instantiated object that has a collider on it, right? So, and they use this example in order to drag it. It uses this on touch hold, meaning it does a raycast, and if you're touching an object that has a collider, then it will populate this on touch hold as true, and then it won't instantiate things. Instead, it will move things. So it's similar to the multiple touch thing that we did before, but instead of having to set a bunch of bools inside of the placement object script, this is just only doing one object, and either you're going to instantiate an object or you're going to drag it. So then we create a list of hits based on an AR raycast hit that we label, that we call hits. And we have to set our AR raycast manager up by getting the component of AR raycast manager. And then we do our touches, and we say if the touches are greater than 0, meaning somebody actually touched the screen, then we define a touch, right? We've done this. This is the second week, I think, or second to third week that we've done touching, right?
Yeah, I have a question
Yeah.
about touching. Is there a way you can like limit touching? Like, let's say you only want a person to be able to place like one moon, for example.
Yeah.
So how would you do something like that?
So this will only do one object.
Okay.
It has to do with when you instantiate an object.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, touch equals input get touch 0. So the first finger that touches, that's the one you're looking at. You get a position from that. Touch position equals touch dot position, right? We have a touch here called touch, and that touch has a component called position. We set touch position to be that position component. Then we look at the touch phase, and we're only doing things if the phase is just began. So if touch phase equals touch phase dot began, then we do a ray cast, a physics ray cast, to see if we touched an object first. And we're saying, we're calling this ray, and we're using screen point to ray to the touch position. And we have a ray cast hit called hit object. And so then if physics.raycast of ray output to hit object, and we take a look at whether the placement object, which we've named placement object because we have no originality, if that is, we look to see if the hit object .transform.get component has a placement object script in it. If it does, then placement object will not be null. If it doesn't have a placement object script in it, then placement object will be null. And we're only doing things based on this. We're only doing things if placement object is not null, meaning you actually touch something that has a placement object script in it. Does that make sense? It's a little like recursive.
So the raycast is looking to see if there's a plane that we can put something on, right?
There's two types of raycasting here.
Okay.
You're talking about AR raycasting.
Okay. What
This
raycast
is physics raycasting, which looks for colliders.
Okay.
So in the thing that has the collider, does it have a script inside called placement object?
Okay.
If it does, then you've touched
Something.
the object that you've placed. And you want to, instead of instantiating, you want to set on hold to be true.
Okay.
Okay?
So this is looking to see if like you've already placed a plane and if you're touching the plane.
If you've already placed an object on the plane,
Okay.
and you're touching the object so that you can drag it.
The dragon.
So that you can drag the dragon.
Gotcha.
Okay? So setting on touch hold is true so that when we're down here, we're either if placed object equals null because you touch somewhere that there wasn't a placed object, then instantiate the placed object at that instantiate the prefab at that position and rotation. If you're on touch hold because you tapped it, then instead of doing that, then move it to where you're dragging, basically. Okay? So first we do our physics first to see if we touch something that exists. And by existing, I mean something that has the placement object script in it. If you don't, then you go ahead and do your AR ray casting. And even if you do, you still do your AR ray casting, because even if you're going to move it, even if you did touch the dragon, you don't want to just move it anywhere in the screen. You want to move it on the trackable plane. So you still have to do that AR ray casting to find out where that position is on the plane. So we do our ray cast. We get this touch position using trackable type plane within polygon. And actually, if you do it this way, using Unity engine .xr.ar subsystems, you don't have to have this long form thing down here. You can just say trackable type .plane. So that's the better way of doing it. And I didn't catch that one. I was going to update that from this example. Trackable type plane within polygon. So it draws that polygon first and then looks for a plane within what you've actually detected. If you just did plane, it'll detect a plane and make that plane infinite, and you can actually put it on something that's not in where you've detected yet.
Where did you define as plane within?
Right here under trackable type. So this is a subsystem method of this trackable type class. Does that make sense? So Unity engine.xr.ar subsystems have trackable types in it that include plane within polygon, also plane, also faces, but you guys don't have that ability on your devices. Also feature points. There's a bunch of other things that are trackable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, then this plane just points to the ground.
So yes, this is plane within polygon, and in our raycast manager, we're only looking at horizontal planes, and we set that in the editor, right? We told it to only look at horizontal planes. Okay? So yeah, when it hits a plane, you get a pose. And if the placed object equals null, meaning you haven't yet placed an object, then instantiate the placed object equals instantiate placed prefab at the hit pose position at the hit pose rotation. So place an object equals that. So you go ahead and instantiate that object. Once that object has been instantiated once, it won't instantiate any new ones, because we're saying only if placed object equals null, equals null. And once you've instantiated something, this will have a value. It won't be null. So it won't do anything. Else, if touch hold, meaning if you're touching the object, then move it. Transform position equals hit pose position. Transform rotation equals hit pose rotation. Rotation is not really doing anything. The rotation is kind of static in this object. We could look at doing rotations manually later. We probably use an asset from the asset store to do that. It'd be the easiest way anyway. So what happens if you've instantiated an object and you've touched the screen but you didn't touch the object? What happens? Nothing. Exactly. Because it would go to this else, and then it would say if on touch hold, and touch hold would be false, so it wouldn't do this if statement. So it would just do nothing. So that's what happens if you touch nothing, you get nothing. All right, does that make sense? Okay, so that's how that works. And And let's go back. Is there anything else we want to look at? What else? What other? Oh, the effects manager. We didn't look at that. So let's look at the effects manager script. And this just deals with the buttons. That's all this does. So there's some sanity check in here that throws an error if you didn't drag that stuff into the inspector. It'll say, hey, wait a second. If these equal null because you didn't set it, it'll say you must set the buttons in the inspector if any of those buttons are null, and just return. So it doesn't do anything. It can't do anything because you haven't told it what to do. But if it does, if you have done that, and if you have to set the light, then it does the same thing if you forgot to set the light. But other than that, it adds this on-click toggle light button, which is what we named it, right? This is, well, we have our private button called toggle light button. We have our private button called toggle shadows button, and our private button toggle plane detection button. And we attach a listener to those. Because these are buttons, they already have this function called on click, meaning you've clicked the button. And then it adds a listener, and so basically if the button gets clicked with this add listener, it will run whatever void function you have in between the parentheses. So if you click the toggle light button, it will run the void toggle lights. If you click the toggle shadows button, it'll run the void toggle shadows. Okay, and that's the way buttons pretty much work across the board whenever you're using these UI buttons. You can have a button that does whatever you want. You just define that void function and you call it on this add listener thing. Okay, so if on your own scripts or on your own projects you want to change the color of your sphere or change the color of your object, you can, in your void, you could say something like void change color and call up the model, call up the game object here and set the color in the script from here. You could probably just use a public game object, whatever, and then you could, in your inspector, you could drag that game object into that public field, right? And then you could change the colors. There's lots of different examples of that online on how to change the color of something by a button. You could do the same thing with pretty much anything. We're using it for turning on and off lights, turning on and off shadows, and turning on and off the plane detection. So plane detection is just enabling or disabling the AR plane manager. So AR plane manager. So every time this is toggled, AR plane manager enabled equals not AR plane manager enabled, which just means do the opposite of whatever value you had stored there. So if it was enabled, disable it. If it was disabled, enable it. Okay, and then it does a for each because you might have more than one plane and turns those off. Because a lot of times you're only detecting that one plane and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but sometimes you got a plane here and sometimes you have a plane here. So it does this for each to turn all of those off. So that's what happens there. Toggle lights. This is default light, which we defined up here with a public light, or I guess it's private but serialized. So it's in the inspector and then we drag the thing into the inspector. Default light enabled equals not default light enabled. So if it was enabled, disable it. If it was disabled, enable it. And this is where it changes that text. And it says get components and children text. .text default light enabled question mark. This is called tertiary style coding. Basically, if it's true, it does this. If it's false, it does that. Okay? So when it's false, when it's true, the text says disabled lights, meaning so it is enabled, the text says disabled lights. Click on it, and now they're disabled. The text says enable lights, so that when you click on it, now they're enabled. That's how that works. Same thing with shadows. If the but it is using an if default light is enabled, first of all, because you're not going to have shadows if the light's not enabled. Then change the shadow strength. Is this greater than 0? If it isn't, if it is, then set it to 0. If it is greater than 0, or sorry, is the shadow strength, so if the lights are enabled and you toggle the shadows, if the shadow is greater than 0, meaning it's probably 1, then set it to 0. If it's not, it's 0, it's less than 0, or not less than 0, but it's not greater than 0, meaning it is 0, then set it to 1, meaning turn the light on. So that turns the light on, turns the light off, or yes, shadow strength. Turns the shadow strength on, turns the shadow strength off, based on whether the light is enabled or not. And then that's defining this value called shadow value, and then we set the light shadow strength to that shadow value. And then same thing with the text. It's the same thing we did up here. We're they're going to say enable shadows or disable shadows. Okay? So next week I will add a little bit. I'll get the actual light working on this so that the thing goes dark and when the lights go off, because right now it's not. And we'll build it next week. So, but for your homework for next week, you don't have to do lighting unless you want to, but I don't think you do. So what I do want you to do is, if you didn't complete it for this week, you won't be penalized as long as next week you have the requirements that we had before, plus one other function that we haven't really done in class before. So something cool and interesting. Okay? If you already did it this week, your homework will be easy because all you have to do is add that one function that you haven't done this week. But nobody this week actually had all of the things satisfied, so I think you all have some work to do. Some of you have a lot of work to do. Okay? And again, we have office hours on Monday. I'm available on Tuesday and Wednesday and Monday. So please use me. Use Mark. We do not have on Monday because Monday is a holiday. I will not be here. Neither will Mark. But every other day, Tuesday, Wednesday, I will be here. I can't help you on Thursday mornings.
You want my help so you can email me and I can. But
Yeah.
I have to see your code. You
What?
can't just be like, my code's not working. What do I do?
I can if you want. I'm in my office usually, so you should email me, but I can pretty much come and meet you anywhere. There are classes in here sometimes though, so like if there's a class we might have to meet somewhere else. But I would definitely suggest you guys try to do your homework. I know, like, I was a student too. It makes sense to do it on Wednesday night, but if you do it on Monday, if you do it on the weekend, you do one try at it, and then you got problems, then you get Tuesday to meet with me, and then you have Wednesday to iron out those problems. And you don't have to be doing 4 hours every day. You can just be doing an hour each day, you know. But if you wait till Wednesday, there's not a lot anybody can do for you, right? So let's try not to have that happen again. All right, cool.